Well, folks, buckle up, because if you are new to the low-carb community, I'm about to reveal the big fat surprise that Nina Teicholz stumbled upon while writing her book with the same title, a book I highly recommend. And let me tell you guys, it's a real shocker. And if you're new to my channel, hi, I'm Dr. Hampton, a board-certified family and obesity medicine doctor with a master's in nutrition and functional medicine, and my goal is to help you achieve metabolic health. So there Nina Teicholz was, minding her own business, researching the impact of trans fats in our diet back in 2003. But then she decided to take a detour and focus on saturated fat instead, and boy, did she uncover some juicy tidbits. Turns out back in 1961, the American Heart Association started telling us to cut back on saturated fat in our diets. Now, this was based on the Ansel Keys diet heart hypothesis and his poorly done but well-known 7-country study. Later, the USDA jumped on the same bandwagon in 1978 and advised us all to avoid saturated fat in our diets. But after digging deep into the research, Nina found out that there wasn't a strong link between saturated fat and heart disease. Talk about a crazy plot twist. But that's not the only big fat surprise she discovered. After spending so much time doing nutritional research related to saturated fat, she was surprised to find that the dietary guidelines are not based on sound scientific evidence, just like she learned was the case with saturated fat. And since that discovery, she's been on a mission to help get this message out to the public. But before I share what she learned about the dietary guidelines, I will share a link in the video notes to the Nutrition Coalition, which is the organization Nina Teicholz created, dedicated to establishing a solid scientific foundation for the U.S. dietary guidelines for Americans. Additionally, if the dietary guidelines have not served you, share in the comments so more people can get this message and stop relying on guidelines that are not helping them heal or stay healthy. All right, everybody, buckle up, because we are about to dive into the major reasons why the dietary guidelines should not be trusted. And let me tell you, it's a roller coaster of outdated science, misleading literature, and governmental involvement that would make a soap opera jealous. So here are the major findings Nina found regarding the dietary guidelines for America. Number 1, it is important to note that the science underpinning the current guidelines are outdated. The most recent guidelines released in 2020 cover the years from 2020 through 2025, and this report included scientific reviews that were 8 to 9 years out of date for dietary patterns and 4 years out of date for recommendations for infants and young children. Secondarily, the guidelines omit the major bodies of scientific literature. Studies on weight loss and low-carb diets were omitted from the 2020 expert report, despite their importance, as you know, in addressing health conditions such as type 2 diabetes. Number 3, the process for developing these guidelines have been taken over by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, better known as the USDA, sidelining outside experts on the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee, also known as DGAC. This raises concerns about conflicts of interest and transparency in the development of the guidelines. Now, number 4, the guidelines are also not meant, believe it or not, for the general public, as 60% of Americans have at least one diet-related chronic disease, but the guidelines do not review the relevant science for treating these diseases. Number 5 concern is that of the dietary recommendations are contradictory and do not reflect the current scientific evidence. Let's think of an example. The guidelines advise keeping dietary cholesterol as low as possible despite insufficient evidence linking dietary cholesterol to blood cholesterol levels, even if we actually cared about total cholesterol in the first place. We now know that the total cholesterol is not as important as other factors like the quality of the LDL cholesterol particle, whether it's large or small, is a much better predictor of cardiovascular disease. Number 6 issue deals with saturated fats, and that the guidelines impose limitations on it despite insufficient rigorous evidence supporting these limits to heart disease prevention. The USDA also lacks a recognized methodology for evaluating scientific evidence, leading to inconsistencies in the review process. So if we look towards the next dietary guidelines, which should come out at the end of 2025, it's clear that significant reforms are needed to ensure the guidelines are trustworthy and aligned with current scientific knowledge. You know, we all have a stake in the health of our nation, so it's imperative that we strive to better health outcomes for all. I want to really thank Nina for all the work she's doing with the Nutrition Coalition and encourage you to support her work as well. Share in the comments, how you feel about Nina and this topic, because, investigative journalists like Nina, along with others like Gary Taubes, have impacted the world of nutrition in ways that you really can't express in words, and why we should support their mission. So I really thank you guys for coming to the Metabolic Health Docs YouTube channel. And until the next video, continue to be safe, be well, and continue to protect your nest.